Hamas of Israel in Gaza. Trump signs spending bill, longest government shutdown. UK review calls for repatriation of Shamima Begum, others from Syria. A PFN urges Trump's support for Tinubu, rejects military threat. Good afternoon, welcome to the World in 30 Minutes on Politics and Business Television. I'm Fatima Abubakar Oibo. Many thanks for joining us. Details of this news stories and more to come shortly after the break. To stay with us. Welcome back. And now that's news info. Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad PIJ have announced plans to hand over the body of an Israeli captive in Gaza within hours. The move follows ongoing mediation efforts aimed at easing tension and addressing humanitarian in the conflict zone. Sources indicate that the handover will be coordinated through international intermediaries to ensure safe transfer and compliance with agreed protocols. The development comes amid heightened global calls for restraint and renewed negotiations between both sides. Observers say the release could serve as a confidence-building measure in broader talks over hostages and ceasefire arrangements. International stakeholders continue to press for de-escalation, emphasizing the urgent need to prioritize humanitarian relief and stability in the region. Well, Israeli President Isaac Herzog has strongly condemned recent settler attacks in occupied West Bank, describing them as shocking and unacceptable. Speaking at a public event, Herzog stressed that such acts of violence undermine the rule of law and threaten the country's democratic values. He called on security agencies to take decisive action against perpetrators and ensure accountability. The president's remarks come amid rising tensions in the region, with reports of Palestinian communities facing repeated assaults by extremist settlers. Herzog emphasized that Israel must uphold justice and protect all civilians, warning that unchecked violence could further destabilize the fragile situation. His statement has been welcomed by rights groups, urging stronger measures to curb settler aggression. President Donald Trump has signed a bipartisan spending bill ending the longest government shutdown in United States history. The measure, passed by Congress after weeks of political deadlock, restores funding to federal agencies and allows hundreds of thousands of government workers to return to their jobs. The shutdown, which lasted over a month, had disrupted services nationwide and sparked widespread concern over its economic impact. The White House confirmed that the agreement provides temporary funding while negotiations continue on broader budget issues. Analysts say the resolution marks a critical step in stabilizing government operations, though debates over long-term spending priorities remain unresolved. For now, the bill's passage brings relief to federal employees and contractors who had endured weeks without pay. Dozens of indigenous protesters forced their way into the COP30 UN Climate Conference venue in Belém, Brazil, demanding stronger action to protect their lands and communities. Security personnel quickly intervened after demonstrators breached barriers at the high-level blue zone, leading to scuffles that left 2 staff members with minor injuries. Witnesses say protesters used the disruption to highlight grievances over agribusiness, oil exploration, and illegal mining threatening indigenous territories. UN officials confirmed that calm was restored after barricades were set up inside the venue. While Brazilian authorities managed security outside, protest leaders insisted their voices have been ignored in global climate negotiations, stressing that indigenous communities bear the brunt of environmental exploitation. The incident underscores growing tensions at COP30, where activities are pressing world leaders to prioritize indigenous rights in climate action. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has met with troops on the front line as heavy fighting continues between Russian and Ukrainian forces in key areas. The visit, aimed at boosting morale, saw Zelensky commend soldiers for their resilience and bravery in defending the nation. He reiterated that Ukrainian struggle remains critical to preserving sovereignty and freedom, even as battles intensify across contested regions. The front-line engagement comes as international observers warn of escalating clashes in eastern and southern Ukraine. Military officials say Ukrainian forces are holding their ground despite sustained Russian offensives. Zelensky's presence underscores Kyiv's determination to stand firm, while calls grow globally for renewed diplomatic efforts to end the war. A new independent review has urged the British government to repatriate Shamima Begum and other UK nationals currently held in detention camps in Syria. The report highlights growing humanitarian concerns, warning that prolonged detention without trial poses legal and moral challenges. It argues that bringing detainees back to the UK would allow for due process under British law and reduce risks of radicalization within the camps. The review also stresses that repatriation could strengthen national security by ensuring proper monitoring and rehabilitation of returnees. Human rights groups have welcomed the recommendation, insisting that the UK must uphold international obligations while addressing domestic safety concerns. The government is yet to issue an official response, but the debate over Begum's case continues to divide public opinion. You're still watching The World in 30 Minutes live on Politics and Business Television. Still to come, Pakistan identifies Afghan nationals behind recent bombings. Stay with us. Welcome back. Indian security officials have traced the sequence of events leading to a recent attack in New Delhi, beginning with provocative posters that surfaced in Kashmir. Investigators say the posters carried extremist messaging and were linked to groups suspected of planning coordinated strikes. Within days, a car explosion rocked the capital, raising fears of a wider network behind the assault. Authorities have since intensified surveillance and tightened security across sensitive locations. The Delhi blast, which caused panic but was swiftly contained, is now under thorough investigation by counter-terrorism units. Officials believe the incident underscores the evolving tactics of militant groups seeking to spread fear beyond Kashmir. The government has vowed to bring perpetrators to justice, while urging citizens to remain vigilant as security agencies work to dismantle potential sleeper cells. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Interior Ministry has revealed that the suicide bombers responsible for recent attacks in Islamabad and South Waziristan were Afghan nationals. Officials say investigations confirm the identities of the attackers, linking them to cross-border militant networks. The government stressed that the incident highlights ongoing security challenges posed by extremist elements operating from neighboring territories. Authorities have vowed to strengthen border controls and enhance intelligence cooperation to prevent further incursions. Security forces are also intensifying operations in affected regions to dismantle militant cells. The revelation has sparked renewed calls for regional collaboration to combat terrorism and ensure stability along the Pakistan-Afghanistan frontier. In the meantime, Pakistan's parliament has approved a controversial measure granting lifetime immunity from prosecution to the country's president and the chief of army staff. Lawmakers say the move is intended to safeguard national leadership from politically motivated cases, but critics argue it undermines accountability and the rule of law. The decision has sparked widespread debate across political and civil society circles. Supporters of the legislation insist it will will ensure stability in governance and protect top officials from distractions that could weaken national security. However, opposition voices warn that the immunity provision could embolden leaders to attack without fear of consequences. The development marks a significant shift in Pakistan's political landscape, raising questions about transparency and democratic oversight. Meanwhile, the Libyan government has deported 80 Nigerian migrants over alleged illegal stay in the country. According to officials, the deportees were arrested during a series of immigration raids targeting undocumented foreign nationals. They were subsequently processed and flown back to Nigeria under the supervision of Libyan authorities. The development has sparked renewed concern over the plight of Nigerians seeking irregular migration routes across North Africa. Authorities in Nigeria say they are working with international partners to ensure the safe return and reintegration of affected citizens. The deportation underscores the growing crackdown on illegal migration in Libya, a country often used as a transit point for migrants heading to Europe. In another development, the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, PFN, has called on U.S. President Donald Trump to lend support to President Bola Tinubu in tackling Nigeria's insecurity challenges. Speaking at a national gathering, PFN leaders emphasized that international cooperation is vital to strengthening Nigeria's fight against terrorism, banditry, and other violent crimes. They urged the U.S. to back Nigeria with intelligence, technology, and strategic partnerships rather than threats of military intervention. PFN further warned that external military pressure could destabilize the country and worsen existing tensions. The Christian body stressed that Nigeria's sovereignty must be respected while encouraging dialogue and collaboration as the best path to peace. Leaders reaffirmed their commitment to praying for national stability and called on global partners to stand with Nigeria in its pursuit of lasting security. And that wraps up the program, but before we go, the headlines again. Hamas PIJ to release body of Israeli captive in Gaza. Trump signs spending bill ends longest U.S. government shutdown. UK reviews calls for repatriation of Shamima Begum, others from Syria. PFN urges Trump's support for Tinubu rejects military threat. For more updates and in-depth analysis, follow Politics and Business TV.